But I think there are also people who are genuinely struggling with mental illness and are surrounded by communities of people who are encouraging them to do bad things and telling them it's a good thing. And they're in vulnerable positions where they have delusions and are having those affirmed. So when they are told by other people, like, it's totally fine for you to do this, you're exactly like the other women, and you're going to be this great example for trans athletes, then they think they're doing something positive. But I think that it could be either. I think there are also people who think, well, this is going to be a great way to make some money, and nobody can criticize me for it, because if they do, then we can call them all the scary names that we think they're afraid of.
Welcome to the Michele Tafoya podcast.
Well, that young woman is making waves in her sport, which is skateboarding. She hasn't done it competitively in a while, and when she tells you this story, you might learn why that is. There's been a lot of unfairness, and it would discourage almost anyone who is in a sport where they want fairness. But Taylor Silverman has many sides to her. Not only is she a skateboarder, she's Jewish, and she's taken some anti-Semitism online from some goofball trolls, and she'll get into that too. This is a young woman that you'd want your kids to listen to. So I encourage the whole family to gather around and listen to Taylor Silverman. Economists are warning us about massive tax hikes that could hit your IRA and 401k hard. With inflation rising and global uncertainty, it's no wonder central banks and many Americans are turning to gold. If you haven't thought about gold yet, now is the time. Trust Priority Gold to help you diversify your savings with gold and silver. Text GOLDEN, GOLDEN, to 800-405-GOLD for a free gold info guide and see if you qualify for free shipping and storage. Experts agree physical gold is one of the best ways to fortify your savings. Act now to get your portfolio working for you while the market is golden. Text GOLDEN to 800-405-GOLD to learn more. That's GOLDEN to 800-405-GOLD. Taylor Silverman, it's great to meet you and introduce you to my audience. Nice to have you with us. You are is it safe to call you a professional skateboarder?
A lot of news has referred to me as professional because they see I'm competing for money, making money doing it, and they assume it's professional. In skateboarding, I think there are different standards. So I was a competitive skateboarder. I still skateboard. So I just call myself a skateboarder.
Good enough for me. But your experience is what I really want to dip into here, because you've been brave enough to come forward and talk about the elephant in the room that some people seem to want to think is just okay and acceptable. And that is men. I almost said biological men, but we shouldn't have to say that.
Yep.
Men competing against women in the women's categories. They say that they are trans women, that they have transitioned to becoming women, and that should make them eligible to compete against, again, biological women. When did you first encounter this kind of scenario in skateboarding?
So the very first time that I traveled to a contest and realized that there was a man entered into a women's division was actually in 2018. And at that point, it was one of the first times I had actually traveled to another state to go compete in a larger women's event. So I didn't expect to do very well. I just wanted to go see what it was like, see where I stood. And I had competed in a qualifier with a male athlete, and neither of us did very well. I think I actually placed above him. And I thought to myself, this is really crazy that they've actually allowed this to happen, but I'm sure this is going to be something we laugh about next year and will be, this crazy story that they know we can't have happen again. But then in 2020, I traveled to Chicago, and it was like a ladies' day event, and I placed second to a different male. So I started to realize that even a lot of the girls at these events were applauding this, didn't seem to see any issue with it, thought that it was really progressive and great. But at that point, I still didn't really want to speak up because it was a smaller organized event. There was no money involved. I thought, these people are going to run this how they want to, but obviously I didn't agree with it. But then in 2021, I was competing in a Red Bull circuit that was Red Bull Cornerstone. They call it like the best in the Midwest contest. So I had qualified in my home state at the time of Michigan, and then went on to compete in a qualifier in Lincoln, Nebraska. And then I made it into this finals event. And it was the day of the finals that I found out that there was a man competing. And this was a different man again from the first two. So I started to realize this is maybe kind of common. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this has just happened to me 3 times. But at this event, it felt different because there was like thousands of dollars on the line. In all these qualifiers I had competed in, I had placed first and received $500. And I realized that this man had been going to different states competing in qualifiers, collecting $500 as he was winning all of these qualifiers too. So the day of the finals, I so badly want to say something, but the feeling of speaking out when a lot of the people will attack you, and having seen that happen to others online, it was a very scary situation to be in. I did talk to some of my friends who had traveled there from Michigan and people who I knew in the skate community there. And everyone seemed to agree with me, but everyone also was kind of turning the other way and staying silent. So out of fear of being attacked, being disqualified from the contest, and in the back of my head knowing that based on the rankings, I was probably going to place, but unfortunately I was competing for second place. And also knowing that I had spent money out of my own pocket to travel there, rent a house to be there, I thought, I'm just going to do my best today, and I'm going to talk to Red Bull about this afterwards. And so what ended up happening is this man placed first. He also won women's best trick. And between the qualifiers and the finals, he took home $5,000 of the prize money that was meant for women. And my paycheck was cut a couple $1,000s because of that, or roughly, maybe a little bit more. And I ended up emailing Red Bull afterwards and telling them that, I knew they were in a difficult position too. And it was probably a hard thing to deal with, to have to turn somebody away, but that it had impacted me in this way. It had impacted all the other girls who got bumped back. We did not consent to this. We were told this was a female division, and that I wanted to have a conversation with the correct person in order to ensure that this would not happen in the future. I didn't even ask them to correct my paycheck. I just told them I didn't want this to keep happening, and I knew that it might be unpopular to say so, but it was more important to me to do the right thing. And they completely ignored me. They refused to speak to me. So I posted it on social media thinking that I needed to get it off my chest, and I did not expect the response to be, viral all over the world, news stories, and just a bunch of interview requests back to back to back, and to still be talking about it over 2 years later now.
Yeah.
But I realized that a lot of people care about this. A lot of people have gone through this, whether they're a parent, a coach, an athlete themselves, and that a lot of people were really scared to speak up, and I felt like I was in a position that I could do that. So I will not stop until this is fixed.
Good. I applaud you. I applaud you. It was courageous. It was the right thing to do. At the very heart of our democracy lies a principle we hold sacred: free speech. Free speech. It's the cornerstone that supports every freedom we cherish. But here we are in a digital age, and discussions about our wealth, our rights, and our future are being muffled or overshadowed in mainstream narratives. And that leaves a lot of people feeling like they don't have a voice in the conversations that are crucial to our financial independence and security. This is where wealth protection research steps in, armed with a mission that's never been more critical. Wealth Protection Research is not a financial advisory firm. They're defenders of free speech. They are committed to giving a voice to those who have been silenced. Wealth Protection Research tirelessly seeks out financial experts, and these are the voices that challenge the prevailing narratives, especially as we navigate the uncertainties of the 2024 election. Wealth Protection Research has created a 2024 Election Wealth Protection Report. It is a free report that highlights the 3 best ideas for protecting and growing your money heading into the 2024 election. It contains ideas the mainstream media won't touch, and listeners can get it completely free by texting the word IDEAS to 76626. That's IDEAS. If you believe in the sanctity of free speech and the importance of financial freedom, act right now. Text IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy of this 2024 Election Protection Report. It's time to widen the scope of what we're told, to hear the ideas the establishment doesn't think you can handle, and to take control of our financial destinies. Text IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy now. Let's clarify for our listeners that skateboarding, there are divisions based on male or female?
Typically, there are separate divisions. Yeah. When I first started skateboarding, it was actually kind of uncommon to see a women's division just because there weren't a lot of women. So sometimes you'd show up at a contest, realize there weren't any women there, and they'd let you ride with the men's division, which meant, you're going into it knowing you're at the disadvantage. But
and would you please explain that disadvantage? Like, what advantages? Because for those of us that don't skateboard, does a male have over a female?
So I think a lot of people can understand that males in general have athletic advantages, and in skateboarding, it's huge. Like, we have our bone density is different. Women are more prone to injuries. The angle that our hips and our knees have makes us more prone to injuries. We have slower reaction time, which is really important in skating because you're making all these small movements very quickly, popping your board, flicking your board, catching it. And it's all very fast, but there's a lot that goes into it. And I also think that size can matter too, because men can jump higher. They are able to jump down things and not, get hurt as easy. I think that testosterone, although it's not the only factor, does play a role in men being willing to do things that they know are more dangerous without thinking about it the same way that women might. And it's really just common sense when if you watch a men's division versus a women's division in any skateboarding contest, you're going to be able to tell it's almost a different sport.
Well, see, and I remember Serena Williams sitting on a late night show explaining that men's tennis and women's tennis were almost different sports.
Yeah.
Because of the differences that men have in terms of strength, size, and all the things that you just mentioned. And that is why Title IX was developed. That is and codified. That is why we have divisions in sports. Why we're watching a female gymnastics team of 5 and we're watching a men's gymnastics team of 5. And so you're sitting there in a ladies' day competition and there's a male competing. And obviously there is financial incentive for him to do that. And he took a lot of the money. I'm amazed that Red Bull did not respond to you. So they have, even after all of this went viral and you've gotten all this attention, has Red Bull ever reached out?
Red Bull, so there's a guy, Eric Dummer. His last name is Dummer. He is Mr. Dummer, which makes this, it's like some things.
You can't make it up.
God has a sense of humor, I think. And some things you can't make up. But after I first posted this post on social media, after waiting weeks for this guy to respond to me and hearing nothing from him, I got a call because I was about to go on Piers Morgan. That was like one of the first big interviews that I did. And I ended up doing a lot after that. But I'm guessing that he was also contacted about going on this show to, say what he thought. But I can't say that for sure, but based on how this played out, I think that was the case. So I received a call that was a privated number, and it was like 5 to 10 minutes before I was about to go live with Piers Morgan. And he called and said that it was a really complex issue and he wanted to talk to me about it. And I didn't have to go tell all these people. And I told him, look, it's not a complex issue. You're just like, for lack of a better word, you're just an asshole. And I told him, you had a really long time to contact me, and I asked you to reach out to me to schedule a time to do so. And I'm more than happy to speak to you, but at this point, you're going to have to schedule a time with me over email because I have a pretty busy schedule and a lot of people want to talk to me about this. And since then, he has not contacted me to schedule a time to talk. That was a very quick phone call. I told him, look, I got to go live right now. And it's a little too late.
And have you seen any evidence that Red Bull has done any public appearances on this? Did they go on Piers Morgan? Have they responded to you publicly?
No, in fact, it's been the opposite. They've just continued to do these contests that they sponsor, that they allow men into, whether it be skateboarding or cycling. And it's not just Red Bull. There's also a contest organizing kind of governing body called the Border. And they have very much so pushed for males being included in female competition. So in skateboarding, this has been a very common issue. There are several different men doing this, and they're making a lot of money. Like the guy who I competed,
taking it out of the hands of you don't have access to that opportunity now.
Yeah. And the guy that I competed with at this Red Bull event in Nebraska, I ended up looking into it after the fact, and I realized that he had done like 10 different women's contests, all of which he was taking home prize money. And there's another guy who he just did a contest a couple of weekends ago from the time we're filming this. He goes by like Ricky Trace, and he did a contest called Jackalope in Canada, and he placed third, but he still took prize money, and he bumped a 13-year-old out of third place. And he's done several of these contests. He's raked in thousands of dollars in prize money. And he was actually the man who was trying to get into the women's Olympic team last Olympics. And they did stop him. They told him no, but the only reason was because he had too high of testosterone levels. It wasn't anything to do with him being a man.
It was the testosterone levels.
And I think that they try to make excuses like that when they know that it's wrong, but they don't want to just say outright that we're not letting men in this. And I wish that more people would have the backbone to say something that is such common sense and so simple and that protects women and girls and their opportunities. Because when they kind of tiptoe around, to me, that sounds like they just don't really care about how badly this impacts us if they're not able to just say what's actually happening.
Well, this is all really interesting. Did you say the company that organizes the events is called The Border?
Yeah, The Border, but it's
so we have another crisis at the border, is what you're saying. There are two.
It is a border crisis. It's spelled differently, but it is a border crisis of its own.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
it's actually it doesn't have the E. It's just BOARDR. Wait.
That because it's cooler when you drop a.
But if you look up the Border website, that is the site that has like all these global rankings, and they run a lot of these contests, and
cycling
they
too,
work with Red Bull.
Okay.
The Border is just skateboarding, but
just
Red Bull sponsors all sorts of different sports contests.
Well, we've seen this in cycling as well, and to suggest. So, let me ask you this. These males that were competing in the women's division, what entitled them to do that? Did they have to have a DNA test? Did they have to have their testosterone measured? Do they just need to show up and say, I identify as female? Do you know?
They just show up and say that they identify as female. And I think it's really sad that, I mean, obviously in something like the Olympics, there's going to be drug tests. There's going to be all sorts of tests done to ensure that the athletes are eligible. But in a lot of these events, it really is just you show up and you compete and you assume that people have the decency to be honest. But unfortunately, that's not the case anymore. And people can just show up. And I don't know if they are showing up with actual malicious intent to steal from women. Unfortunately, I think that that is often the case. But I think there are also people who are genuinely struggling with mental illness and are surrounded by communities of people who are encouraging them to do bad things and telling them it's a good thing. And they're in vulnerable positions where they have delusions and are having those affirmed. So when they are told by other people, like, it's totally fine for you to do this, you're exactly like the other women, and you're going to be this great example for trans athletes, then they think they're doing something positive. But I think that it could be either. I think there are also people who think, well, this is going to be a great way to make some money, and nobody can criticize me for it, because if they do, then we can call them all the scary names that we think they're afraid of.
Hey, I've told you about my friends at besthotgrill.com, who also make the best gas logs for your fireplace. Now is the time to prepare for the colder fall and winter seasons. With rising energy costs, you'll want to warm one room, not your entire home, with a blazing Rasmussen gas log fire. With the convenience and controllability of a natural gas or propane gas log set, you can reduce the time you use your furnace. How cool is that? No pun intended. Gas logs are also an excellent source of emergency heat to keep your family warm during worrisome power outages. I mean, that would stink if you couldn't get warm. Rasmussen gas logs also make your fireplace look great when it's not in use. If your room has a modern or contemporary design, check out Rasmussen's popular fireballs and firestones. Get a free personalized log set sizing recommendation and more information about USA-made Rasmussen gas logs and Solaire infrared grills at besthotgrill.com. That's besthotgrill.com. USA-made Rasmussen gas logs and Solaire infrared grills at besthotgrill.com. So initially, you were afraid to speak out because very naturally you had seen blowback. Goodness knows, many of us know what that's like. Mm-hmm. You did post this. It went viral. You started getting reaction. How much of it was supportive and how much of it was antagonistic?
So it started out as a lot of hate comments. And that was because I had a small audience. I had, a few thousand followers at the time. I posted this to my Instagram account, of which I posted skateboarding clips. And a lot of the comments were calling me transphobic, as you can imagine, calling me hateful. And it very quickly turned to most of the comments actually being about me being a Jew. And that, I think, is what made the story blow up as much as it did, is that people were not arguing the point I was trying to make. They were upset that I was Jewish. So I didn't have Twitter at the time, and I started getting texts from friends back home saying, you're trending on Twitter. You need to get on Twitter right now. And they send me screenshots from people like Colin Wright, who had stood up for me, and I think it's his girlfriend, Christina Buttons. She's a journalist. She had written
Correct.
about me and also talked about the anti-Semitism. And then Tim Pool saw it, and he said that he was going to pay me back the difference that Red Bull didn't pay me, and wanted to work out having some sort of interview or something. So I was like, wow, this is really starting to reach people. And it was like a flip switch after just a couple hours of it being posted. And the comments turned to incredibly positive. Of course, there were still some hate comments, and the, trans rights activists were flowing in too. But I realized how much support I really had. And there were people pouring their hearts out to me in messages telling me that, their daughter had gone through this, or something that had happened in the state that they lived in, and how they wanted to speak up, but they saw what was happening to me, and they were just encouraging me to be resilient and not stop, not let it silence me. And I knew right from the beginning that if I do this I'm not deleting it. I'm not apologizing. Like, I'm going to power through. I'm going to trust that God is going to protect me through this. And luckily, things ended up going pretty well. And I want people to know that, like, speaking up about something like this, they want to convince you that your life will be over. But my life has actually drastically improved. I've gotten a bunch of opportunities that I never would have gotten. I've gotten to meet the most incredible people. I've kept all the friends that I had before. There are some acquaintances who I'd skated with, and they don't like me anymore, but it wasn't a huge loss. I've become closer with my friends and my family. I met my fiance because of this. Like,
Wow.
a lot of positive things have happened, and by no means is my life over. I didn't lose a job. In fact, I got job offers, and I took one. And I think that you kind of get this clouded view of reality when you're looking at this issue online and seeing these people who are saying nonsensical, crazy things, and seeing how many of them are going along with it. When most normal people, they're not online posting their thoughts about every news article that comes out. But in real life conversations, they're like, yeah, that makes sense. I agree with you. I wouldn't want that to happen to my daughter. And we really are the majority. It's scary when you see the attacks online.
Well, and when also you see people in power, politicians, politicians, maybe you voted Democrat most of your life and you see some Democrat politicians saying, yes, trans rights, trans women are real women, all of these things, or celebrities. And you start to feel like, oh, I'm just little old me. And I better not go counter to what these big, powerful, rich, famous people are saying. Yes, you should.
Yeah,
yes,
and actually, at the time I spoke up, I wasn't really paying attention to that. And it was really shocking for me to realize that this issue that I very much so saw as something that was nonpartisan was actually a huge political issue, and that the Biden administration was trying to rewrite Title IX so that it wasn't about protecting girls and women anymore. And that all these Democrats are voting against women having a fair place in sport and equal opportunity. And I have more conservative values. So I knew that conservatives were speaking up about this, but it was shocking seeing Democrats and leftists actually take the stance that this is fair, what's happening right now.
And
it's mind-blowing.
Trying to normalize it. It is mind-blowing. It is
mind-blowing. It's also, it's funny coming from a party that claims that they're so pro-woman.
Yeah. They don't want to take us backward. They want to take us forward. But in fact, men are regaining power in places where women had gained power. And that's okay. That's okay. To me, that's going backwards.
Totally.
So it is nuts. I want to dig a little deeper into your faith because you experienced this anti-Semitic response to your stance on men competing in women's sports. How has that affected your view of anti-Semitism in America?
Well, I knew that anti-Semitism was an issue. And I think one of the reasons that there were so many comments like that is because when I spoke up, I was actually in Israel. And I had been there for a few months. And that was also one of the reasons why I gained the confidence to speak up, because I knew that nobody was going to show up at my house or, disagree with me to the point that they could become violent. All the people I talked to there, they all agreed with me. So a lot of people, they call me a white supremacist and a colonizer and a war criminal and all these things. And I think that a lot of people are really misinformed about Israel, about its history, about what's happening there now. And they think that they're experts because they see an infographic on TikTok that is incredibly biased and that is meant to make you dislike Israelis or Jews or try to conflate the two as if it's exactly the same thing. And it's really unfortunate, and it's made me realize that that's something that I need to speak up about too when I have the chance. but I don't know how to address it with people online, because I've realized that a lot of the stuff online, you can't change their opinions. They're really just trolls who are going to comment all day. They don't actually want to have conversations. But I've had a lot of conversations in real life with people who are curious, who don't really know what's going on, and they've been productive. So it's made me more confident in talking about that too. But I've realized that, aside from just anti-Semitism, there's this growing hatred for religious people in general. Because at the time, I didn't really consider myself super religious. I obviously believed in God. I was raised by a Jewish family, but I wasn't raised incredibly religious. We did a lot of traditional stuff. And over the past couple of years, I've actually been going to a Christian church and learning more about Christianity. And that's interested me a lot. And my fiance is Christian, and it's been really positive. So I've noticed that, Christians get that hate too. It's not the same, but I think what it is it's like people hate truth and they hate God. And I think that a lot of people are misled to worship themselves or these ideologies. And I think deep down, they may actually be seeking something like religion, but they turn to something that is not the right path. And they do not like seeing people who have chosen to worship God and to, share his word.
So right at the heart of our democracy lies something that we hold sacred. That is free speech. That free speech is the cornerstone that supports every freedom we cherish. But in today's digital age, these discussions about our wealth, our rights, and our future are either being silenced or they're being overshadowed in mainstream narratives. And that leaves a lot of people feeling voiceless in the conversations that are critical to our financial independence and security. And so here is where Wealth Protection Research comes in. They are armed with a mission that's never been more critical. Wealth Protection Research isn't a financial advisory firm. They're basically defenders of free speech. They are committed to giving a voice to the silence. So Wealth Protection Research tirelessly seeks out financial experts, and these are the voices that challenge the prevailing narratives, especially as we navigate the uncertainties of the 2024 election. Wealth Protection Research has created a 2024 Election Wealth Protection Report, and it highlights the 3 best ideas for protecting and growing your money heading into this zany 2024 election. It contains ideas that, the mainstream media isn't going to touch, and you can get it completely free by texting the word ideas to 76626. If you believe, as I do, in the sanctity of free speech and the importance of financial freedom, do this now. Text the word ideas, IDEAS, to 76626. You will get a free copy of this 2024 Election Protection Report. It's time to widen the scope of what we hear, to get the ideas the establishment doesn't think you can handle. But of course you can. And to take back control of our financial destinies. Text ideas to 76626 to claim your free copy right now.
So, it started out with, I didn't know who Tim Pool was when I first spoke up, which is crazy now because at the time I was watching things like Daily Wire, PragerU, but I was not aware that there was a skateboarder who had this huge podcast about politics. So I ended up talking to Tim. He invited me to come out as a guest, and what resulted from that was me actually being hired at Timcast. And I've been working out here now for a couple of years. I've made a lot of connections, a lot of friendships with people who I didn't know there were young women out there who felt the same way that I did, because in the skateboarding community, there's a lot of, woke feminism, and it's not something that you really hear conservatives talking about. You kind of stay a secret conservative. You don't share your opinions because you don't want to upset anybody. And I really had to get over that and realize that it's so much more important to speak up. And I'm not really that scared of people disliking me or saying bad things about me or calling me names. I'm more scared of what the future is going to be like for girls who never experience fairness in sports, and what the future is going to be like if these like just ridiculous ideologies keep becoming mainstream.
Yeah, I'm with you. I share that anxiety, that concern very deeply. So I'm glad there are people like you. There are people like Riley Gaines. There are people like Jennifer Say. We're all Tulsi Gabbard. We're all willing to say enough, and we're gonna keep building that coalition, Taylor.
And I'm so grateful for those women, and especially Riley, who is absolutely wonderful, and I'm so grateful to know her. She was one of the first women who I saw speaking up and doing interviews when this had already happened, but I hadn't really gone public about it yet.
Right.
And I think I needed to see that. I needed to see Riley speaking up. I needed to see Selena Soul speaking up. She was the track runner from Connecticut.
Yep.
And it's insane now thinking like I like text these girls. I'm friends with them, and I've gotten to speak alongside of them when they were these huge inspirations to me and helped me gain my own voice.
Hey, Taylor, newsflash. You have gained your own voice, and now there are going to be young girls, skateboarders, and other athletes who look up to you. So thank you for being brave and doing good with your platform. I'm grateful to you. I thank you. I commend you for speaking out. The more voices that do, the more that will in the future. And hopefully we stem this tide. She is Taylor Silverman.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for speaking up too. I know that you know what it's like to have people attack you on the internet for saying common sense things. And it's like, it's crazy that we even have to have this conversation right now, but I'm very grateful for the opportunity to talk to you.
And I'm grateful that you came on, and we'll follow up with you. Taylor Silverman, everyone. Be brave, do good. We'll see you next time.